Welcome to ETL's Transformation Manager 10-minute demo. Firstly, we're going to go through a couple of slides and then we'll get straight into the demonstration. So let's begin. For today's demo, we're going to use information from the airline industry. And particularly, we're going to use some quite contrived flat files in terms of a turbine blades file, some nuts and bolts, and a standards file. And what we're going to do is move that into an Oracle database. So if we have a look in a little bit more detail, at the top there we can see the flat files that we're going to use, and at the bottom we can see the database structure that we're going to move that information into. So as you look at the flat files, what we can see is the blade files related to the standards file. We can also see that the blade file is related to the bolt file. So firstly, what we need to do is move the information from the blade file regarding the engine, and we're going to move that into the engine table in the Oracle database. Now we also have a lot more information in that blade file, so we want to take the blade information, blade ID, name and description, and we're going to migrate that into the turbine blade table within the Oracle database. Next, we're going to take the cost and the currencies. We're going to look up against the standards file. We're going to see if we can improve that currency value, and we're going to migrate that into the cost table. And finally, we're going to look at the attachment bolt, and you've guessed it, it relates to the bolt file. And we can get the information from that bolt file and then migrate that into the bolt table. We can see on the right hand side there we also have the lookups for a standard. So within the database there's a standards table that we could use to do the lookups. But in this case what we're going to look at is the standards file being passed into us as a flat file. So let's get on to the demonstration. Here we can see TM Designer, the main feature of Transformation Manager. And if we have a quick guided tour around, we can see at the top left we have a projects pane. Within that we have a demo project. We also have an error handler project. Below that we have the models pane. We can see we've loaded a number of models in there. And below again we have the procedures pane. And these procedures we can see we have two: add text and a standardized currency in this case. But these procedures, you can have as many as you want. They're available within any project that we have with it in this repository. So they would be available within the Error Handler project. They would be available in the demo project and any other project that we were going to create later on. Now, what these procedures allow us to do is reuse the code. So if we've got some code that we're going to be using time and time again, we can write it as a procedure and we can reuse that in any of our projects. Moving over to the right hand side here, we can see that we have the source. At the bottom we have the model, so you can see we have a new flat files model, and within that what we've done is we've loaded in those three flat files. So we've got the standards file, we've got the turbine blade file, and finally we've got the nuts and bolts file. So all those files have been loaded in as a single model within TM, and now they're available for us to migrate to the target. In this case we're currently looking at the turbine blade. In the center pane we have some information about how we're going to migrate that data across, and on the right hand side here is our target, which is an Oracle database that we've loaded in called engine, and this has the engine table, the bolts table, turbine cost, and also the standards table. And as we can see, if we just have a quick look at some of the elements, so you can see we're looking at the engine element in particular while we're moving this information at the moment. So firstly, the hollow block indicates that it's a non-mandatory field. The solid block indicates that it's a mandatory. The orange icon indicates that it's a primary key. You can also see the little arrow icons here indicate relationships or constraints. So this relationship here is going to the turbine. We can expand it out. We can see everything within that turbine table. Here you can see we have some little green dots indicating foreign keys. So if I just mouse over there, we can see that relates to the engine, and we can see that one's used in the bolts relationship. So you can see that TM's not only brought us in the tables and columns, it's brought us in the constraints. It will also bring in comments as well. So if the database is fully commented up, then those comments will be brought in also. Okay, if we have a look on the flat file side again, we can see that we have the turbine blades. Again, we have a similar structure. So that, again, it's a key thing of TM. Everything looks similar, even though these are different sources and targets in terms of databases and flat files. But you can see we've also added some relationships to this. So turbine blades now has relationships to a bolts file, and it also has a relationship to the currencies. And we can have a look at these relationships. So to create one, we just hit the new relationship. To have a look at them, we can just click there on the properties, and we can see that the forward relationship name is to bolts. It's a 0-1 cardinality, and we have a look at the conditions, and we can see that the attachment bolt is equal to the bolt ID. And again, to create the new conditions, you can just click there and select the fields that you want to relate on. You can also add literals parameters at this point, and that gives you quite a wide range of options when you come in to create your relationships between your elements. And what that means is that not only can you add relationships to things like flat files that don't have them in naturally, but you can also enhance your database models, so you can actually improve on your database and add extra relationships in to do more fine tuning, to add relationships that you understand are there but haven't been defined by constraints, and all this can be done within TM. Another key feature of TM, if we have a look here at the project, we can expand the models. We can see we have the source model as a flat file, target as the engine database. But by right clicking, we could change these. So if you've got a new version of your flat file come in, a new version of the database is updated, you can swap these over and just select the new version that you've loaded in. And you load them in simply in the models pane. You can click load, right click, load model, and select the type of model that you're going to load in. So it's very quick and easy to do. And when you are swapping these models over, what you'll see is you can actually bring over those relationships you've added, so they're not lost. You don't have to re-add them in again. They'll already be there for you. Okay, so when we look at actually moving the data, you can see here we've got an ID being populated from engine ID, and we can recreate that simply by dragging and dropping, and there we go. We can see we put that line in. The next line we have here is again reasonably simple. We're going to move the engine name and populate the name. This time we are going to call a procedure called add text, so let's have a quick look at that. And here we can see it's a very simple procedure. We've got the local block. We're going to use our input value, append -xyz to it, and return that as a return string. So a very simple procedure there, but you can start to see what you can build up. You can evidently build up a lot more complexity there. You can use source models and target models within your procedures. So quite simply, we're going to add -xyz to that engine name and populate the name. The next thing we're going to do is, you can see here, when we're moving information from the turbine blade to engine, it's all quite nice and self-contained. Within TM, what you do is you add cascades that cascade down to the next step, if you like. So you can see an engine is related to a turbine, so we may want to go down now and populate the information into a turbine table. On the source side, we want to stay at the turbine blades file because we still have a lot more information there to move. So we can add a self relationship in, which is quite simply done by clicking new self relationship, and that allows us to stay at that level. Right click, navigate to cascade, takes us down. We can see we're at turbine blade still, but now we're at the turbine level on the target side. Again, some fairly simple one-to-one mappings there, a little bit of concatenation with the description and the blade ID, and two cascades down. One to the bolts. If we navigate through that, we can see that's a simple one-to-one down there. Again, with all these mappings, we do have fuzzy matching, so you can actually get all this created for you. You don't have to do the drag and drop all the time. And we also have the cost. So let's just step in and have a look at the cost. So here we can see we're also using our standardized currency procedure. We can expand that, have a look at it. So we're doing a little bit more complexity in here. We're logging some information out. We're using log4j to log that out to a file called alt file. And we're also going to note some errors. So as we were saying about earlier, the error handler project will be used, and we'll be picking up these errors if any of them are picked up when we run the transform. You could also do it from a lookup, and we can, if I use control space, you can see some of the patterns we can use for if, then, and else, kind of repeat patterns that you can add in directly, and these can be added straight into the center pane there. You can see our procedures are available, and you can see we have a lookup also there called get standard. There are also a number of inbuilt functions that you can use, and all these are available directly within Transformation Manager. You can also call out to things like Java if you want to add your own methods in for things that you cannot do as standard within Transformation Manager. You can see we're going to log some out to a main file for the actual blades that we processed, and here's the catch block that's going to catch those errors and allow us to deal with them within our error handler project. So if I expand that, we can see we've attached the error handler, which is quite simply an add. If we expand the error handler project itself, double click it, you can see we're taking those errors and we're going to write them out to our target. In this case, it's just a flat file. It could be a database, it could be an Excel file, it could be anything we want it to be. So if we right click on the project, once we've done all this, we can actually build it. We can see we're going to build the error project and the demo project. We're getting some warnings about assigning optionals from into the mandatories, so we're actually identifying based on optional attributes, which is risky at runtime, so we need to know that our flat files do contain all that information. And when we're happy with that, we can actually launch the migrator. And here we can see we've got some settings here to connect to the flat files. And on the right hand side, our target database here, which is just connecting to a VM that we've got running. And finally, our error text file that we're also going to output. So once we've entered that information, we can click run. You can see it runs pretty quickly. And that's populated the few rows into our target table. If we have a look at the error files, we can see that they've been just created. And again, we could have a look at these. So if I open them up to have a look at, then you can see for 3 of those values, it's going to report the error, saying it's directly setting the currency. And we could actually have a look at some of these log files. So you can see there was a currency found for the 4th one, so one of those did have a currency found. And you can see that all 4 have been logged out into our log file as we were looking at for the main file.log. So that quite quickly shows you the way that all that information has been reported out as we've been going along. It's been handled, dealt with. In this case, we've continued and written the information to the target. Thank you very much for watching, and that concludes our demonstration for today.